Ethan had never imagined that an ordinary Thursday night would change his life. He came home tired, just like every other day. His shoulders heavy from hours of work and the endless pressure that followed him everywhere. His apartment was small and quiet, the kind of place where the silence felt heavier than the furniture. He dropped his bag by the door, kicked off his shoes, and sighed as he turned on a single lamp. The soft yellow light filled the room, but it did little to brighten his mood. His grandfather had passed away a few weeks earlier, and the sadness still lingered around him like a thin fog. Ethan missed the old man terribly. His grandfather was the only person who ever made him feel understood, the only family member who always listened. When Ethan received the box of his grandfather's belongings, he promised himself he would go through it when he felt ready. That night, though he wasn't truly ready, he felt a small pull toward it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was something he couldn't name. He pulled the old wooden box out from the corner of the room. It was darker than the furniture and carved with delicate lines, almost like vines wrapping around the surface. The wood smelled slightly of age and cedar, a scent that reminded him of the warm study his grandfather used to read in. Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor and opened the lid. Inside were a few familiar things: a worn leather notebook, a pair of reading glasses, a faded photograph of his grandfather as a young man, and a talisman he had never seen before. The talisman was small, made of polished stone that shimmered deep red under the lamp. Strange symbols curved around its surface, soft and flowing like writing from another time. Ethan felt a tiny shiver of curiosity run down his arms. His grandfather never collected odd objects, and definitely not anything mystical. The talisman seemed out of place among the simple belongings. There was also a folded piece of paper sitting beneath it. Ethan opened it and found a short note written in his grandfather's careful handwriting. It mentioned the talisman, saying it had been given to him by a traveler long ago and that it was connected to an ancient legend. Ethan frowned, amused and confused. His grandfather never told him anything about legends or strange gifts. The note ended with a few words that looked like a chant or a phrase in another language. Ethan traced the letters with his finger, trying to understand their meaning, but he couldn't. Still, something about the shapes made him want to say them out loud. Maybe he was bored. Maybe he wanted some distraction. Maybe the quiet apartment felt too heavy and the mysterious writing offered a moment of escape. Whatever the reason, he took a slow breath and whispered the words, trying to copy them exactly from the note at first. Nothing happened. He almost laughed at himself for expecting anything. He placed the talisman in his hand, still staring at its glowing red surface. Then the air changed. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't dangerous, just strange. The room felt as if someone had opened a window even though everything was shut. A soft breeze brushed past him, gentle but impossible. The lamp flickered. Ethan blinked and looked around, unsure if his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. He opened his mouth to say something, even if it was only to himself, but the words never came. Right in front of him, the air seemed to fold. The space shimmered, like heat rising from the road on a hot day. Then the shimmer grew brighter. The room filled with a soft glow, not harsh, but warm and otherworldly. His breath caught in his throat as the shimmering air slowly shaped itself into a figure. The light condensed until a tall form stood before him. Ethan didn't know what to think. He wasn't scared exactly, but a quiet shock wrapped around him. He couldn't move, couldn't blink, couldn't believe what he was seeing. The figure took on a clearer shape, a woman, elegant and impossible. She looked nothing like the images people might imagine when they heard stories about powerful beings. Her presence was calm but strong, and there was something graceful about the way she stood. Her eyes glowed softly, not with harsh light, but with a warmth that made Ethan feel strangely at ease. Her hair flowed as if the air around her carried a gentle wind, even though the room was perfectly still. For a long moment, she simply looked at him. Ethan stared back, unsure whether he should speak first or wait. Before he could decide, she smiled, a small curve of her lips that was both mysterious and unexpectedly gentle. "You called," she said, her voice smooth and clear like the soft chime of glass. "And so I came." Ethan opened his mouth but found he had no words. He wasn't sure what he had called. He wasn't sure what she was, and though she seemed calm, her appearance still felt extraordinary enough to leave him frozen. She tilted her head slightly, as if studying him with curiosity. "You hold the talisman," she said, her eyes lowering to his hand. "That means you completed the summons." Ethan finally managed to speak. "Summons? I just read the words on the note. I didn't know it would do anything." Her smile grew a little more amused. "Most who read those words know exactly what they are asking for. You did not." "That is interesting," Ethan swallowed, unsure what to say. "Who are you?" She lifted her hand, and the soft light around her brightened for a moment. "I am Azareth," she said, her voice flowing like a calm stream, "a being bound to the one who awakens the talisman. You may call me a guide, or a guardian, or something else, depending on what you choose. You have earned 3 wishes, and I am here to grant them." Ethan blinked at her. 3 wishes? Like a fairy tale. Azareth gave a small nod. "Something like that, though my existence is much older than the tales humans created." Her eyes glowed gently, but there was a kind of softness in them that didn't match the idea of a powerful being. But yes, you have 3 wishes. Anything your heart desires. Ethan stared down at the talisman in his hand and then back at her glowing figure. The room was quiet except for the sound of his own breathing. He wasn't dreaming, he knew that. His dreams were never this clear, but still, the entire situation felt unreal, like he had stepped into a world he didn't understand. Azareth watched him patiently, as if she had all the time in the world. You may take your time, she said kindly. Humans often do. Ethan let out a slow breath. I don't even know what to wish for, he admitted quietly. My life isn't, well, it's not exciting, but I don't think I've ever wanted something impossible. She looked at him with a gentle curiosity in her eyes. Then perhaps, she said softly, this night will become the moment your life begins to change. Ethan didn't know why, but the way she said it made something warm stir inside him, a quiet spark of hope, the kind he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't know who Azareth truly was. He didn't know why his grandfather had kept the talisman. He didn't know what the 3 wishes would bring. But he did know one thing. Nothing in his life had ever been ordinary, until this very extraordinary night. Ethan sat quietly on the floor, still holding the red talisman in his hand, while Azareth watched him with calm eyes. The room felt different, now brighter, warmer, and somehow calmer despite the unusual situation. He could feel the weight of her presence, not heavy or frightening, but meaningful, like a soft humming in the air around him. He tried to understand everything that had just happened. He had summoned someone who said she was bound to grant him 3 wishes. It sounded like something out of an old storybook, something impossible. Yet Azareth stood before him with a gentle expression, waiting patiently for his next action. So, I can wish for anything? He asked finally, his voice still soft with disbelief. Azareth nodded gracefully. Yes, your heart's true desire. Whatever you choose. Ethan looked down at his hands. He had never considered what he truly desired. His life was simple, ordinary, full of long hours at work and quiet evenings in his small apartment. What did a person like him even wish for? Money, success, adventure. Those ideas floated in his mind, but none of them felt right. They felt shallow, or too complicated, or simply unnecessary. Azareth stepped closer, her expression thoughtful. Most people who summon me ask without hesitation. They want wealth, comfort, status, or escape. You are surprisingly calm. Ethan let out a small, nervous laugh. I'm not calm. I'm just confused. Her eyes softened slightly, as if she understood. Confusion is natural, but you have time. You do not need to rush. He appreciated her patience. Despite being a powerful being, she didn't seem demanding or impatient. She didn't pressure him. She simply waited. It made Ethan feel strangely safe, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He glanced up at her again. Can I ask something? Of course, she replied with a gentle nod. How long have you been doing this, granting wishes for people? Azareth folded her hands in front of her, a thoughtful look on her face. Longer than you can imagine. Long enough that human years blur together. I have witnessed many summons, many wishes, and many hearts, each one different, yet so often longing for the same things. Do people usually ask for good things? Ethan asked quietly. She gave a soft, almost nostalgic smile. Often they ask for things they believe will make them happy. Whether those things bring true goodness depends on the person. She paused, then added, it is why your hesitation is unusual. You are thinking carefully. Most do not. Ethan wasn't sure how to feel about that. He had never thought of himself as thoughtful or special. He just didn't want to make a mistake. A wish felt like a big responsibility. Once spoken, he imagined it couldn't be undone easily. He looked again at the talisman in his hand, feeling its smooth surface warm against his skin. I don't know if I even need a wish, he said softly. My life isn't perfect, but I can manage. Azareth tilted her head, studying him. You can manage, she repeated, but you do not seem content. Ethan blinked. Content? You carry a quiet heaviness, she said gently. I see it in the way you hold yourself, in the tiredness behind your eyes, in the way you speak about your life. Ethan swallowed. Her words struck close to the truth. He had been tired for years, tired from work, responsibilities, loneliness, and the quiet struggles that came from living without much support. He had learned to ignore that heaviness, believing it was simply part of being an adult. Still, he was surprised that she could notice so quickly, I guess. Things have been difficult, he admitted. Aziri lowered her gaze in understanding. Difficult paths can be made lighter. That is one purpose of wishes. Ethan sighed softly. He didn't want to use a wish for himself. Something about using magic for personal benefit felt strange and undeserved. But then he remembered the way Azareth had appeared, shimmering into existence because he had whispered words he didn't understand. If she was here because of him, did that mean she wasn't free? Did granting wishes trap her in something she couldn't escape? The question formed in his mind before he could stop it. As, are you happy doing this? Offering wishes to people? The glow around her dimmed slightly, not in a sad way but in a thoughtful one. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around the apartment, then back at Ethan with a gentle, almost vulnerable expression. I exist because of an old pact, she said softly. It binds me to the talisman. Whoever summons me receives 3 wishes. Only when the final wish is granted may I return to my realm. Your realm, Ethan repeated. Is that like another world? Yes, she said simply. A place I once roamed freely, a place filled with light and stillness. Her voice held a faint hint of longing. Ethan felt his heart tighten. So, you're not free until the final wish is completed? No, she replied. I have accepted this role for a very long time, but freedom is not something I have felt for many ages. Ethan fell silent, the weight of her words settling slowly over him. He looked at her again, truly looked. Behind her graceful posture and warm glow, there was something else, something quiet, something lonely. He wondered how many times she had appeared like this, offering help to strangers, watching them take their wishes and move on with their lives while she returned to her waiting realm, always bound, never choosing freely. Something inside him shifted. His own loneliness suddenly felt small compared to hers. Azrith took a step closer, sensing his change in expression. Do not feel burdened, she said gently. This is my purpose. Maybe it shouldn't be, Ethan said quietly, as Azrith's eyes widened slightly just enough for him to notice. She wasn't used to hearing words like that. People she met only asked for what they wanted. They didn't ask how she felt. They didn't think about whether she deserved freedom or rest. She opened her mouth to respond, but Ethan spoke first. I know what my first wish is. Azrith straightened, her calm glow brightening around her. You have decided. Yes, her expression grew soft but expectant. She seemed ready to hear anything rich as success, opportunities, adventures. Ethan took a slow breath, steadying his voice, and looked directly into her shining eyes. I wish that you would be free from the pact, free from having to grant wishes, free to choose your own life. Azrith's entire body stilled. Her calm expression froze in place, not with fear or shock, but with something deeper, something like disbelief. The faint glow around her flickered very softly, like a candle surprised by a sudden breath of air. Free, she whispered, almost as if she had never heard the word spoken to her before. Yes, Ethan said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. That's my first wish. Azrith blinked slowly, her composure cracking in a gentle, human-like way. She looked down, then back at him, and for a moment, she seemed unsure how to react. Her eyes shimmered with something soft and fragile, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel for a long time. Ethan, she said softly. No one has ever wished that. He didn't know what to say to that. He simply shrugged a little. It just feels right. Her glow pulsed gently warm, bright, emotional in a way Ethan couldn't fully describe. I do not know how to process this, she confessed. For ages, I have granted wishes, but no one has ever wished for my freedom. Well, Ethan gave a small, awkward smile. I guess someone had to. She stared at him, her calm breaking into a look that was almost trembling with emotion. The air around her shimmered softly, touched by the power of his wish. The talisman in his hand warmed suddenly, like a heartbeat awakening. Azeri took a slow, shaky breath, not out of fear, but something closer to astonishment. And in that moment, Ethan realized something simple yet extraordinary. He hadn't just made a wish, he had changed her life. After Ethan made his first wish, the room felt different. The light around Azareth softened, like morning sunlight spilling across a quiet room. Ethan could feel a gentle warmth in the air, as if the very space was adjusting to the change his words had caused. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt alive, as if it held something new, something fragile and precious. Azareth's eyes, which had always shone with calm and distant power, now held a quiet uncertainty. She looked around Ethan's apartment, the small, familiar space that smelled faintly of coffee and books, and for the first time, she seemed small. Not small in size, of course, but small in the sense that she wasn't towering over the world anymore. She was no longer a goddess trapped in a pact, no longer bound by unseen chains that had dictated her life for centuries. She was free. I don't know what to do, she admitted, her voice soft, almost hesitant. For centuries, I have served the talisman. I have waited for mortals to summon me, to ask, to desire. I never imagined someone would wish for my freedom. Ethan shrugged awkwardly. It just felt right. You've been stuck doing this for a long time, and I don't think that's fair. He wasn't sure why he said it so easily. Maybe it was because he had lived so long with the quiet unfairness of life, the small disappointments and the heavy burdens, that he recognized it in someone else. If that someone was a magical being. Azareth's gaze softened, and for a moment she simply studied him, as if trying to understand how a human could care so much about a goddess's life. Most mortals, she said slowly, are selfish. They rarely think of others beyond their own needs. Your wish, it is a strange and beautiful thing. Ethan looked down at the talisman in his hand. Even though the magic had already been used to grant his wish, it still felt warm, alive with the energy of change. I don't know if it's beautiful, he said quietly. I just didn't want to see you trapped. She smiled faintly, a small curve of lips that held more emotion than she usually allowed herself to show. You have given me something I had almost forgotten existed, she said softly. Choice, freedom, the ability to exist for myself rather than for someone else's desire. That is new. Ethan felt a strange lightness in his chest, a quiet satisfaction he hadn't expected. He had only spoken words from his heart, not thinking about the consequences. And yet those words had changed a life, or perhaps even centuries of existence. It was a feeling he had never experienced before: power without greed, impact without harm. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Azareth's usual radiance dimmed just enough to make her feel less otherworldly, less distant. She moved closer to Ethan, careful and deliberate, her presence no longer intimidating but gentle, almost comforting. "Now that I am free," she said quietly, "I do not have to obey the talisman. I can choose what I wish to do. I think I want to understand humans more, to see what life is like outside the endless cycle of wishes." Ethan looked at her, surprised. "You mean you want to stay here? With me?" "Not exactly," she said with a faint laugh, the sound soft and musical, "but perhaps nearby, close enough to learn, close enough to observe. Freedom is new to me, but I am curious. And your wish has given me the chance to explore it." He nodded slowly, understanding. He hadn't expected her to remain, but part of him was glad she would. There was a strange comfort in knowing that she wasn't disappearing the moment her chains were broken, that they could exist together in this small, ordinary world. Over the next few days, Azareth stayed with him, though not in the way a guest might. She did not interfere with his life or demand attention. Instead, she observed quietly, asking questions and learning about the human world. She was fascinated by the little things: how a cup of coffee could be comforting, how music could stir emotion without magic, how sunlight could change the feel of a room in a way that even she, with her vast knowledge, who had never truly understood. Ethan found himself talking to her more than he expected. At first, it was about small, simple things: the weather, his job, books he liked, but soon it became deeper. He spoke of his grandfather, of the loneliness he often felt, of the small joys he clung to in a life that sometimes felt overwhelming. Azareth listened without judgment, her glowing eyes attentive and soft. She asked questions not out of curiosity for entertainment, but out of genuine interest. One evening they sat on the balcony looking at the city lights below. Ethan was sketching absent-mindedly in his notebook while Azareth watched, her hands folded in her lap. The air was cool, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the soft rustle of leaves. "You humans live such fragile lives," she said quietly, "and yet there is a resilience in you I have never seen elsewhere. I am impressed." Ethan smiled faintly. "It doesn't always feel that way," he admitted. "Sometimes it feels like the world is too big, too fast, too heavy. Perhaps that is why it is beautiful," she said, her voice thoughtful. "The fragility and the struggle, it makes every small victory meaningful. Even a quiet evening like this holds significance." He looked at her, surprised by the depth in her words. "You sound almost human," he said. She laughed softly, a sound that made the small balcony feel warmer. "Perhaps I am learning," she said. "Freedom allows me to learn things I never considered important, and perhaps I am learning from you." Ethan felt a quiet pride swell in his chest. It was strange how a being so powerful, so extraordinary, could seem so sincere and human when she chose to be. He realized that her freedom was not just a gift to her, it was a gift to him as well. She was no longer a figure of awe or fear, but a companion, someone to share moments with. Days passed like this. They ate simple meals together, sometimes in silence, sometimes in conversation. Azareth showed interest in things he had taken for granted: a favorite coffee shop, a local park, even the way the city smelled after rain. She didn't interfere in his life, didn't try to control anything. She simply existed alongside him, observing, learning, and slowly becoming more than the bound goddess he had summoned. Ethan found himself thinking less about work and stress and more about small joys. He noticed the little details in his life that he had ignored: the sound of birds outside his window, the warmth of sunlight on his skin, the softness of a blanket on a quiet evening. Azareth, though not human, seemed to help him see the world differently, reminding him that life could hold moments of wonder even in its quietest, most ordinary forms. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from the balcony, Azareth turned to him with a question that surprised him. "Do you ever feel lonely, even when you are not alone?" she asked softly. Ethan thought for a moment before answering. "All the time," he admitted. "Even when people are around, there's this emptiness sometimes. I think it's part of being human." Her glowing eyes softened. "I think I understand," she said. "I spent centuries in isolation, bound to a duty I did not choose, and yet I never truly understood loneliness until I saw how humans experience it. Perhaps it is not just about being alone, but about wanting to be seen." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's exactly it." For the first time in a long while, he felt understood, not by another human, but by someone extraordinary, someone who had lived through centuries of experience, and yet could still relate to the quiet struggles of a human heart. In the weeks that followed, their bond grew. They did not need words to communicate all the time. A glance, a smile, a shared silence was often enough. Ethan no longer felt the heavy weight of his loneliness as sharply, and Azareth, free for the first time in countless years, found a strange comfort in the simplicity of human life. It became clear to Ethan that his first wish had not only changed her existence, but it had also changed his own. He felt a quiet strength, a sense that he could face his world with more hope and less fear. And Azareth, once a being bound to the endless demands of others, began to experience the world in ways she had never imagined possible. Their lives intertwined in small, subtle ways. Freedom, they realized, was not just the absence of chains, it was the ability to exist fully, to learn, to care, and to connect. And in that small apartment, amid ordinary meals, sketches, and quiet evenings, something extraordinary was quietly unfolding, a bond formed not from power or magic, but from understanding, kindness, and the simple choice to see and be seen. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan found that life with Azareth was slowly becoming something he could not have imagined before. She did not stay just as a magical presence in his apartment. She became part of his routine, part of his small world. She asked questions, shared her own thoughts, and sometimes simply sat silently, observing with a quiet patience that made Ethan feel understood in a way he had rarely experienced with anyone else. One morning, as sunlight poured into his apartment, Ethan sat at the small kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea. Azareth stood by the window, her hands folded gently, watching the light fall across the city streets. She had been quiet that morning, thinking perhaps, or simply enjoying the ordinary moment, something she had rarely done in all her centuries of existence. "Ethan," she said softly after a while, "I have noticed that you have not yet made a second wish." Ethan stirred his tea, looking down at it. The thought of using another wish made him uneasy. His first wish had been made from a place of kindness, something he wanted to give rather than receive. But the other two wishes he didn't know. What could he ask for? Wealth, power, adventure, all of that seemed meaningless when compared to the quiet happiness he was beginning to feel with Azareth. "I know," he said finally. I don't want to use them lightly. I want them to mean something." Azareth turned her gaze toward him, her glowing eyes gentle and calm. Most humans would not hesitate. They ask without thinking, and often regret it later. "It is wise that you are careful." Ethan smiled faintly. I don't want to waste them, or make a wish that could hurt someone, even by accident." She nodded. "You are thoughtful. It is rare to find a human who thinks in this way." They fell silent for a while. The only sound, the faint hum of the city outside and the soft clinking of a spoon against the cup. Then Azareth spoke again. "You carry a quiet strength, Ethan. You have lived a life filled with small burdens, yet you continue forward without complaint. I have observed you carefully. You do not ask for much, even when you could." Ethan shrugged. I guess I don't see the point in asking for things I don't truly need. Life is complicated enough as it is." She looked at him, a faint glow highlighting the soft curve of her face. "And yet, you have given me a gift greater than any human I have encountered before. My freedom. That is something I never imagined I would experience. And you made it happen without hesitation, without expectation, without reward." Ethan felt a quiet warmth in his chest. He had not thought of it as a gift, only as the right thing to do. And yet, hearing Azareth speak this way made him realize how much impact one person's actions could have. As the days passed, their routine became comfortable. Ethan continued his work, though he now found time to notice small joys, the way sunlight reflected off the windows of nearby buildings, the soft music that drifted from a street musician below, the smell of fresh bread from a nearby bakery. Azareth often joined him, asking questions, observing, and slowly learning about the simplicity of human life. One evening, after a long day at work, Ethan returned home feeling unusually exhausted. He sank into his chair with a sigh. Azareth was sitting quietly on the sofa, reading a small book she had found in the apartment. She looked up at him and smiled gently. "You look tired," she said softly. "I am," he admitted. "It's been a long day. Sometimes I wonder if I can keep going like this." Azareth's gaze softened. She had been observing him for weeks and had noticed how much he carried on his own work, responsibilities, memories, loneliness. She had seen the quiet strength in him, but also the exhaustion behind it. "You do not have to bear everything alone," she said. "Even a strong heart can grow weary. Perhaps now is the moment to consider your second wish." Ethan shook his head gently. "I don't want to use it for myself," he said. "Not yet. I don't need it for riches or comfort. I want to live my life without breaking under the weight of everything. But I don't know if a wish can fix that." Azareth nodded, her glowing eyes full of understanding. "A wish can do many things, but it is your heart, your courage, and your choices that truly shape your life. Wishes may open doors, but only you can walk through them." He leaned back in his chair, thinking about her words. She was right. The first wish had changed her life. Yes, but it had also changed him. He had begun to see life differently, to notice its small beauties, to appreciate the quiet moments that once seemed meaningless. And yet, he still carried the weight of responsibility and fatigue, the burden of work and expectations, and the ache of loneliness that had always lingered. "You've changed a lot since that first wish," Azareth said softly, as if reading his thoughts. "You are more alive, more aware, more present." Ethan smiled faintly. "I think you've changed me too," he said quietly. not with magic but with presence. Just having you here, seeing life through your eyes, noticing things I never did before, it makes a difference. Azurith's glow brightened slightly at his words. And yet, you do not ask for your own wishes. You are content with this life, with these moments. That is rare. Ethan hesitated, thinking of the 2 remaining wishes. What could he ask for that would truly matter? What could he wish for that wouldn't feel selfish or unnecessary? He realized that his life had already changed in ways more meaningful than any magic could provide. He had a companion who understood him, even if she was not human. He had moments of quiet joy that had once seemed impossible. Still, he knew that eventually, a wish might be needed, not for wealth, or power, or adventure, but for something that would make life easier, brighter, or more fulfilling. And he realized that Azurith's presence gave him hope that he would be able to make the right choice when the time came. The next day, Ethan went to work feeling a little lighter. He noticed small things he had ignored before: the way sunlight streamed through the office windows, the smile of a co-worker passing in the hallway, the quiet satisfaction of finishing a difficult task. He returned home that evening, greeted by Azurith's gentle glow in the apartment. "Another day passed," she said softly, watching him remove his coat. "And you survived it with grace." He laughed quietly. "It wasn't always graceful. I was tired, stressed, but I made it, you see," she said gently. "Even without wishes, even without magic, your life continues, and you find beauty in it." Ethan nodded. "I guess I do," he admitted. "I guess I'm learning how." That night, they sat together on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker like tiny stars. The air was calm, carrying the soft hum of distant traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves. They talked quietly about the small things: books, music, dreams, memories. Azurith asked questions, listened carefully, and sometimes offered insights that made Ethan pause and think. "You are thoughtful," she said softly. "You carry more care for others than most humans I have observed. That is a rare gift." Ethan looked down at his hands, feeling the warmth of her words. "I don't know if it's a gift," he said quietly. I care. Maybe too much sometimes." Azurith smiled gently. "It is what makes you human, and it is what makes your wishes so powerful, not because of magic, but because of your heart." Ethan realized that she was right. The first wish had not been about magic at all. It had been about kindness, empathy, and understanding, and that had changed both their lives. As the days continued, Ethan knew that one day he would need to use the second wish. But for now, he felt content to live in these quiet, ordinary moments that had become extraordinary because of Azurith's presence. He knew that the right time for the next wish would come, and when it did, he would be ready, not out of fear, or greed, or desperation, but out of hope, understanding, and a desire to continue building a life that was meaningful, full, and bright. In the glow of the city lights and the soft warmth of her presence, Ethan realized that life was not about grand gestures or sudden changes. It was about quiet moments, understanding hearts, and the courage to act with kindness. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that his life, though ordinary in appearance, had become something truly extraordinary. Ethan had lived with Azurith for months now, and their days had settled into a quiet rhythm. Life no longer felt heavy, and even the long hours at work seemed easier to bear with the thought of returning to the apartment where she waited. She was no longer the goddess bound to a talisman, no longer a being of distant mystery. She was a companion, a presence that made his ordinary world extraordinary. But still, the 2 remaining wishes sat quietly in the air between them, unspoken. Ethan often thought about them, wondering if he should use one. It was tempting. A wish could make life easier, brighter, even perfect. Yet he knew the power of a wish came with responsibility. It wasn't something to spend lightly. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the city, casting orange and pink streaks across the sky, Azurith spoke. "Ethan, you have not used your second wish. Is it because you do not know what to ask, or because you fear the consequences?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, looking at her thoughtful eyes. "Maybe both," he admitted. "I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to waste it. Or worse, I don't want to hurt anyone without meaning to." Azurith smiled softly, a glow brightening her face. "Your caution is wise. A wish is not just about what you want, it is about what is right. And your heart is careful. That is rare among humans." Ethan looked at the talisman in his hand. Even though the first wish had already transformed her life, it still seemed to hum with quiet magic. He thought about everything that had happened since that night. Azurith's presence had brought warmth, curiosity, and comfort into his life. He had begun to notice beauty where he hadn't before. His world had changed, not because of grand gestures, but because of companionship, understanding, and small moments of joy. "I think I know what my second wish should be," he said quietly. Azurith tilted her head, curious. "Do you?" Ethan nodded. I want the strength to live my life without giving up, to face the days without feeling crushed by them, not for comfort or wealth, but so I can truly live, so I can handle what comes my way and find joy even in the small things." Azurith's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise and admiration in her expression. "It is not a selfish wish," she said softly. It is a wish for growth, courage, and resilience. I have observed you, and I know your heart. It is beautiful. Ethan felt warmth in his chest, a quiet pride. He had chosen a wish not for himself alone, but for the ability to face life fully, and to appreciate it in ways he had not known before. I just want to live, he said simply. Azareth placed her hand gently over the talisman. A soft light shimmered from it, enveloping them both. It was warm, not overwhelming, a glow that carried calm, hope, and reassurance. Ethan felt a gentle energy fill him, a sense of courage and clarity he had never experienced before. It was as if his own heart had been strengthened from within, not by magic alone, but by the intent behind his wish. You have chosen wisely, Azareth said, her voice glowing softly. You do not seek power. You do not seek fortune. You seek to be fully yourself, to face life with courage. That is a rare gift. Ethan looked at her, feeling a deep gratitude. Thank you, he said simply, for being here, for everything. Azareth smiled, the glow of her eyes warm and soft. No, Ethan, it is you who gave me freedom. You who taught me that even beings like me can experience understanding and care. We have both learned from each other. For the next few days, life continued in its quiet, beautiful rhythm. Ethan went to work, came home, and found joy in small routines. He noticed the way sunlight spilled across the apartment, the laughter of people outside, the gentle sway of trees in the evening breeze. Azareth continued to learn about the human world, curious and attentive, and sometimes offering insight or questions that made him pause and think. One morning, Ethan awoke feeling lighter than he had in years. He realized that the weight he had carried, loneliness, stress, worry had softened. Not completely gone, but manageable, because he now understood that life was not only about challenges, but also about connection, care, and small joys. He looked at Azareth, who was watching him with a quiet smile, and felt a sense of calm he had never known before. Ethan, she said softly, have you considered your third wish? He shook his head. Not yet. I'm not sure what to do with it. I don't want to waste it, and I don't know if there is anything I truly need. Azareth moved closer, her presence gentle but warm. Sometimes, a wish is not about need, but about hope. Something that can shape your future in a meaningful way. Ethan thought about that. He had already used two wishes, one to free her, one to strengthen his heart, and both had changed life in ways far greater than magic alone. The third wish, perhaps it did not need to be used at all. Perhaps it was enough to live fully, to continue growing, to embrace life and the people in it. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan realized that the third wish could remain unspoken for now. He no longer felt incomplete or lacking. Life itself, with Azareth by his side, was enough to feel extraordinary. One evening, they sat on the balcony again, watching the city lights twinkle like 1,000 tiny stars. Ethan sketched quietly, and Azareth observed, her eyes calm and warm. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the soft hum of life around them. You know, she said softly, freedom is not always about grand gestures or magical power. Sometimes, it is about small choices, moments of understanding, and connections between hearts. You have given me freedom, Ethan, and in doing so, you have shown me that life can be rich and meaningful even without chains or obligations. Ethan looked at her, feeling a quiet awe. You've changed my life too, he said. Not with magic, but with presence, with understanding, with care. Azareth smiled, and for the first time there was no glow or magic to her presence, just warmth, quiet, and connection. Perhaps that is the true magic, she said softly, the kind that does not come from wishes, but from hearts willing to see and understand each other. Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, I think you're right. As they sat together, the city around them alive but calm, Ethan realized that life had become something extraordinary not because of wishes or magic, but because of connection, choice, and understanding. He no longer felt the heavy weight of loneliness or fear. He felt hope, courage, and a quiet strength he had never known before. The third wish remained unspoken, but it did not matter. He had everything he needed: freedom, courage, companionship, and the ability to see life clearly, to appreciate its beauty and face its challenges with heart. Azareth reached out and lightly touched his hand, a gesture of connection that required no words. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, a quiet reminder that they had both been changed by this journey, her freedom, his strength, and the bond they had formed. I think we've both found something, Ethan said softly. Yes, Azareth replied, her voice gentle and certain. Something more than wishes or magic. Something real, something lasting. Ethan smiled. The city lights reflected in his eyes, and for the first time in a long while, he felt truly alive. Life, with all its quiet beauty and gentle challenges, was now something he could embrace fully, and Azareth, free and learning alongside him, would remain by his side not because of a pact or a talisman, but because they had chosen to be part of each other's journey. The days continued, ordinary and yet extraordinary. They shared quiet meals, walks in the park, evenings watching the sunset, and countless small moments that were filled with laughter, learning, and understanding. The wishes had served their purpose, but the true magic was in life itself, the life they were living together. Ethan realized that happiness was not something to be wished for. It was something to be experienced, cultivated, and shared. And with Azareth by his side, he He knew that he had found a life that was rich, meaningful, and full of quiet wonder. And in that small apartment, under the glow of city lights, two beings, one human, one once cadet, sat together, free, strong, and connected, ready to face life's challenges and joys side by side. The third wish remained, unspoken, not forgotten, but unnecessary. They had learned that the greatest magic was not in the words spoken, but in the hearts willing to understand, care, and choose freely. And that was more than enough.